Hey, what's up, guys? So, Erica, Crystal, and I went to go see Passengers this weekend, and I want to do a quick movie review on it. This is not a trailer review, guys. This is going to be a movie review. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you might want to save this video for later, or if you don't care and you want to see if the movie's good or not, I'll do my best not to basically explain the whole story, because that's not what I want to do with these things. Just want to talk about what I liked about the movie, and then that way when you guys go see it, you have a better understanding of what's happening, and you might enjoy the movie a bit better. So I will start off by saying that we really did enjoy this movie. I heard that it had gotten bad reviews. I think most people that give reviews on movies don't know their ass from their elbow, and they go into a movie theater expecting like this. They go in expecting something that's unrealistic, and when they don't get it, they get all pissed off about it. I go into movies expecting a good story, and that's exactly what Passengers gave me. And it was a story that you could actually relate to. You know, anyone can relate to being alone, and that's basically the premise of this movie. And so, obviously, we got Jennifer Lawrence. She played Aurora Lane. We got Chris Pratt playing Jim Preston. We have Michael Sheen, who played Arthur, which was the robot bartender. And then we had Lawrence Fishburne, who played Gus, who had a really brief role in the movie, but it really, tied in to the end and how they were able to basically survive on this ship. And so, basically, to make the long story short, the movie trailer I thought was a bit misleading. So if you have seen the trailer for this movie, you might be thinking the same thing that we thought walking in, where it was basically this ship that was going to another planet, and the journey was going to take 130 years, and the other planet's name was called Homeland 2, and they're basically sending these massive ships full of passengers and crew members to other planets to colonize those planets. So that part of the movie is true, but they've almost made it seem like that the ship was starting to break down and have all these problems because the company that built the ship sabotaged it. And that's not the case. That did not happen in this movie. So, like I said, this is a movie review. So at this point, if you guys want to see the movie and not have any spoilers, click that like and subscribe button and then come back later. So basically what happened is about 30 years into this mission, this voyage, the ship was going through an asteroid belt, and there was this huge asteroid, basically the size of the ship vertically, okay? It was massive, and the front of the ship had this really cool, like, dome force field that was basically, pushing things out of the way or obliterating all these rocks. The rocks would hit it, and they would basically get vaporized instantly. But then when it got to that huge rock, it took so much power and energy for the ship to do that the whole ship basically kind of had like a system failure, and they kind of make you think that that's the main reason why Jim Preston, or we'll use their real names, Chris Pratt's character, why his pod basically malfunctioned, and that's only part of the reason. Yeah, that huge surge of power that it took to break down this asteroid was one of the main causes as to why that his pod, broke open early, 90 years early. But what also happened, and you don't find this out towards the end of the movie, is that a small circular chunk of that asteroid made it through the shield and penetrated the ship and ended up wedging itself into the main computer that controls the ship's engine, okay? I'm pretty sure it was the engine. It looked like the engine, a fusion drive or something, it's all the same, So anyway, so he gets woken up early. He's kind of walking around the ship, not really knowing what's happening. He's checking, all the different features on the ship. He's trying to find help. He's trying to figure out a way to get back into his hibernation pod, because he quickly realizes that he's been woken up 90 years early, and he's probably going to be dead by the time they get to the planet, And he's actually an engineer, so it makes him the perfect guy to be able to try to find a solution as to what's happening. And so there's all these really funny parts where, like, there's this one part where he sits down and he sends an email to Earth, but when he clicks send, it says, your message will arrive in 15 years, expected response 55 years, and it charged him like $6,000 to send this message. And if I was him at this point, I would be like, I don't care how much shit costs. I'm going to be dead by the time I get to this planet anyways. So he just clicks send or whatever, and he realizes he's pretty much screwed. And so then he's walking through the ship, and that's when he meets Arthur. And he thought that Arthur was a person and that had woken up as well, but he quickly realizes that Arthur has no legs and that he's an android bartender. And he was actually probably the favorite character out of the whole movie. And I bet a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, Arthur was the favorite character because he's a robot and he's an android and he's trying so hard to kind of relate to this human, who has all this problem. And when they first meet, Chris Pratt's like, so do you know anything about hibernation chambers? And Arthur's like, yeah, they're foolproof. They'll never break down. And he's like, well, I'm here sitting talking to you. And he's like, well, that's impossible. He's like, well, here I am. And the android's kind of like, all right, and it's almost like as the movie progresses, the android becomes more human, which I thought was pretty cool. But anyway, so it gets to the point where he starts to get really depressed, and then the android's like, doesn't matter where you are, just try to be happy. And so then he starts, okay, so we basically now get to see the entire ship. And I was leaning over and talking to my wife at this point. I was talking to Erica. So he goes to like all these super fancy restaurants, gets all these super amazing food. There's like a huge gym. There's a huge basketball court. There's like a virtual video game room. There's a movie theater with like hundreds of movies to choose from, probably thousands of movies to choose from. All the best food he wants to eat when he goes out. Except for when he first tried getting a coffee. So there's different classes of members on the ship, and he was only like a silver member, I think. And then he was trying to get a coffee out of the machine. There was like 30 different choices, like pumpkin spice latte, caramel spice latte, French vanilla coffee. And he's like pushing all the buttons, and it kept saying, you have to be a gold member to have this. And the only one that would work for him was the bottom right black coffee option. I was like, that sucks. But anyway, so everything else in the ship seemed to be super sweet, and he ended up basically, breaking into a penthouse because his original room that he had was just like a little bed. Ends up breaking into this penthouse and starts living there and starts kind of like enjoying himself, And I'm like, this is pretty awesome. But then it gets to the point to where he's starting to get super lonely, tries to kill himself at one point. There was this place where you could go inside of a spacesuit and walk outside, and he starts to get really down. And he decides that he's going to just go out there and kill himself, but he doesn't do it. And then he's like running away from that area because he just tried to kill himself. And then he ends up slipping on this vodka bottle that he had thrown earlier. And he hits the ground. And when he gets up, that's when he sees Jennifer Lawrence's character, Aurora Lane, in this pod. And then at that point, he's basically learning all about her, falls in love with her. And then he's the one that woke her up. And so in the movie previews, they make it seem like they both were woken up at the same time, but he actually woke her up, and then they basically have this huge romance, and he tells Arthur not to say anything to Aurora that he woke her up, but then the Arthur ends up telling her by accident, and then she gets like ultra pissed, like basically tries to kill him in his sleep. And she's just super mad because so this is the funny thing, and this is what I was saying to Erica. So she's basically like, she's a writer, and what she was going to do was take this 130-year journey, okay, and go to this planet, live there for a year, write a book about it, and then return home, which is another 130-year journey to Earth, and this was supposed to be like her big thing. And so I'm talking to Erica, I'm like, you know what? I go, it's going to take her, 270 years? Yeah, 270 years, no, 261 years to do this, 130 there, 130 back, plus 1 year living there. And by the time she goes to that Earth and then comes back, the technology had probably advanced so much on Earth that other explorers probably already had the opportunity to go to a planet faster and get back faster and write this damn book. Like, if you really think about it, it's 261 years and we're already doing interstellar space travel. Like, I'm pretty sure by the time she got to Earth, there would have been like 10 books written about colonizing another planet. So I think he's basically doing her a favor at this point because her plan seemed kind of stupid, So anyway, so she gets woken up and she is like pissed, wants to kill his ass, doesn't give a shit about anything he says. And still, I'm saying to Erica, I'm like, judging from how amazing this ship is, I would rather live on this ship and go to all these fancy restaurants and this fancy gym and this fancy friggin' game room and this amazing movie theater. No one's to bother me. I have my wife with me on the ship, as long as she wasn't still mad at me because she found that I woke her up, and basically could live the life. Ain't got no bills. I mean, they're charging things to their account, obviously, and they would have to pay that money back when they got to the planet. But that's in 90 years. They're going to rack up a huge bill, not give a shit, and then by the time they get to the planet, they're going to be dead anyways. So who really cares how much money they spend, But anyway, so I just thought it was really ironic twist of fate. And to be honest with you, another thing I pointed out was if she wanted to go back to sleep so she could write her book and all this bullshit. And I was like, the story of getting woken up early and then living on the ship for 90 years until you get to the planet, that's a book I would want to read. That would pique my interest. Not her, going there, living on a planet for a year and coming back. I mean, you could go to Africa and live in the jungle for a year and probably have the same experience that she's going to have colonizing this new world. You know what I mean? It's just like, whatever. So anyways, so at this point in the movie, she's pissed, and then Lawrence Fishburne's character, Gus, who's a crew member, gets woken up, and then he quickly realizes what's going on. He finds out that Chris Pratt's character woke up Jennifer Lawrence, and he's kind of like, well, what are you going to do now? Like, there's nothing that you can't get mad about it. We just got to deal with it. And then he starts noticing all these errors that are happening on the ship, and they basically were only able to figure out the problem because of Gus being a crew member, he was actually able to access all these other areas that the passengers could not. So they went to the ship's control room, and that's where they were able to see that basically what was happening is all these different errors were occurring on the ship because of that penetration that happened with that asteroid. And it was basically an error would happen and it would overload the system, and then that system would fail, and then the rest of the computer system would try to take on that responsibility, and things just kept getting burnt out. And so what ended up actually happening to Gus is he died relatively quickly because for some reason the hibernation process for Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt's characters, when they woke up, I guess, the right way in the right sequence. But I think Gus was basically jolted awake, and so his body just started shutting down as soon as he was awoken because he wasn't awoken properly, and he ends up dying rather quickly, but he gives his key tag to Chris Pratt and basically said, fix the ship, because if they don't fix that ship, they're not going to be the only ones dying. All 5,238 members on that ship are going to die. And so it gets to a point to where, they fix the ship. And I don't want to go into that too much, of how they do it in case you guys want to see the movie. But there are a lot of really other fun parts, like while the ship is breaking down. Like there's this really cool scene where Jennifer Lawrence is in the pool, and then the gravity shuts down, and she gets stuck in like this orb of water, and she basically drowns in it, and then has to get resuscitated. That was pretty amazing. And then the part when they're actually fixing the ship, Chris Pratt had to go outside and basically open the exhaust vent by hand because that was malfunctioning too. And so he's holding like a door as a shield, and he opens the exhaust vent, and then Jennifer Lawrence hits the friggin' button and sends out all the exhaust fumes. And I'm sitting here thinking, there's no way he would, like, I don't know what kind of spacesuit he had on, but I'm thinking that suit should have basically been vaporized from how hot these exhaust fumes were. But he ends up actually surviving that, and he's basically tethered to the ship, and at one point he can't hold himself in place anymore. His boots were magnetized, and he was standing on the ship. He couldn't hold himself in place anymore, and he gets shot into space. And then his tether breaks, and Jennifer Lawrence has to go and save him. And then he ends up getting resuscitated because he actually dies because his suit had like a hole in it, and he froze. Just like in Guardians of the Galaxy, same exact scene, right? And so anyways, they decide that they're going to live on the ship. And what I thought was really cool was there was a point where Chris Pratt, now that he had the bracelet from Gus, where he could have actually put her back in the chamber, and she could have gone back to sleep, but she decides that she wants to stay awake with him. And then at the end of the movie, you don't see them 90 years later, but at one point, he actually planted a tree for her in the middle of the ship. And so they go back to that tree, and now it's like basically fully grown, and you could see that they had made like a home in the ship. Like they built like little houses, and they must have released like birds and other animals. Oh, and that was funny too. So when they're in the cargo bay, they're showing like all the animals, and so the humans are in these chambers, and they're in hypersleep. The animals were in like these ice blocks, like just sitting there. Like it was wicked funny to me. But anyways, they end up, thawing them out. They end up there. They had like a whole area of all these plants. So they planted all these plants. And then basically the movie ends with the crew members, because the crew members wake up 4 months earlier than the passengers. So they get woken up and they walk into the main room. And then they see like basically a jungle almost right in front of them. And that's when the movie ends. And I was a little disappointed in the ending, because I was thinking like maybe they had kids and they would show like how they looked 90 years later. Did they build a family? Like what actually happened? But even without that closure, it was still a good movie, still had a good ending. And yes, I know I talk a lot when I do a full movie review, but that's because there's a lot to talk about. So if anyone told you this movie wasn't any good, they're dumb. Definitely see this movie. There's a lot of parts that I did leave out because I don't want to give away everything that happened. But be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you see the movie, make sure you come back here. Or if you've already seen it, leave a comment down in the comment section below so we can live chat about it. I'll see you guys next time.